listening to us on dtmwickedradio.com. And we have a great agenda, people, as always. We do have a gemstone of the week, I'm sure. If we get to it, that's a whole other story. I have no idea. We do have the birthday segment, and there is a second sight. And I'm a little bit fired up about this one, Victor. As you know, I spoke to you about this the other day. My onions are completely twisted about this, and I'm going to air it out. Anyway, you could follow me personally, Psychic Medium Chris George, on my fan page on Facebook, which is Psychic Medium Chris George. Victor's fan page is Victor the Voice Furman, like I always say, with a voice like that, he needs a fan page. And then, of course, we have our group page, which is Second Sight. And again, I say this every week, we have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of listeners, and nobody's joining the group. I don't know what the frig is wrong with you people, but you're all out of your friggin' mind. We have one of the best shows out there. Our pages, our group is just as good as any group out there. We put meditations, I put psychic protections up there. I do all kinds of crap for you people, and nobody's joining the group. I don't get it. You're twisting my onions, and everyone's going to pay for this. Trust me, in the future. Anyway, I feel a little bit better now.
Thank you.
Let me get to the famous birthdays. There wasn't too many to choose from, so I picked a few. We got Steve Jobs. We got Ace Pagoda, Fish. I can't believe this guy's still alive. It's something like 172. We have George Harrison. We have Ric Flair. Jackie Gleason. And here's a little story. My dad, may he rest in peace, actually played Jackie Gleason on Broadway when he was a kid.
Really?
Yes, he did. We got Ric Flair. I don't know if I said him yet. We have Elizabeth Taylor, Ron Howard, and Johnny Cash. I love Johnny Cash. He was badass. I like him. Anyway, my thought for the week is, as hard as it may be, sometimes it's better to take a deep breath and just walk away.
Did Johnny Cash ever come to you in spirit?
No, the only celebrity that has ever come to me in spirit, and I'm going to tell the story real quick. I hope you don't mind. Years ago, there's a nursery school here in Staten Island where I live, and it's called the Tanglewood School. And all the teachers there, they wanted me to do a seance for them. So I actually went into this preschool, or whatever kind of school it is, I guess it was a preschool, and I did a seance there. And lo and behold, somebody there absolutely loved Dean Martin. Okay? I'm a big Dean Martin fan as well. Anyway, I didn't know this at the time. I didn't really speak to anybody before. I just went in there, I did my thing, and at the end they told me what happened. And I actually channeled Dean Martin saying An Evening in Roma, which I don't know all the words to, especially the Italian part, even though I'm Italian. And only celebrity I've ever channeled. So it was my celebrity channel story.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, you're very welcome. So, Rick, I know we have a pretty awesome guest tonight.
We do, and talking about celebrities, we're going to talk about celebrities tonight because our guest is Thomas John, also known as the Manhattan Medium. He's one of the most popular psychic mediums in the United States. He's wowed audiences across the world with his impressively accurate messages from the other side, hosting sold-out events such as A Night with Spirit and Dinner with the Dead. He's been featured in People, U.S. Magazine, New York Magazine, The Daily News, Vanity Fair, GQ. He's appeared on Dr. Phil, Entertainment Tonight, Dish Nation, as well as the Real Housewives of New York and the $1 Million Listing Show. He's widely known as the celebrity psychic, and he's the author of the brand new book, Never Argue with a Dead Person. Good evening and welcome, Thomas John. Good evening, Thomas.
Thanks for having me. How are you?
Wonderful, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
So we're excited to have you. It's not often we have, famous psychics on with us, and you being from New York, that's a double positive as far as I'm concerned. So this is awesome. We're happy to have you here. Victor, why don't you start us off?
Oh, I just want to know, Thomas, I don't know if you know, but Chris has a cousin by the name of John Edward. Do you know John personally?
I don't know John. I don't know John personally. No.
Okay.
I tremendously respect his work and know about his work, but I don't know him personally.
Okay, great.
Well, can I answer that, Victor?
Go ahead, please.
I obviously know John very well, and I do also think he's outstanding at what he does. But you know what, Thomas? You're not missing anything because he's not that nice of a guy.
They're cousins. I guess you can say it. So
yeah.
It's coming from a cousin, family that knows family. Anyway, Thomas, let's start off with your interview. Please, your bio tells us of your first connecting with spirit at the tender age of 4. Please share this experience with our listeners.
Well, like a lot of people who come into this work, they might have a certain circumstance, like a car accident, or they have some sort of traumatic event that happens to them, and then they all of a sudden have this ability. And so I don't sort of have that. I just always remember seeing people that were crossed over. And when I was younger, I didn't obviously realize that it was anything abnormal. I just thought that it was what it was. And then as I got older, I realized that, obviously everybody doesn't have this ability as developed or as innate as I had it. But I do remember seeing my grandfather. That happened a lot when I was very young. That was my first experience.
Interesting, because my first experience with this embodied spirit was also my paternal grandfather. And I was 7 years old, and I was living in Brooklyn at the time. And my grandfather came to me. He appeared in front of me, full apparition in front of me in my room. And he smiled at me and lingered for a few minutes, and then he sort of vanished. And he and I were very close. He was much older when I was young. I was very young, and he was already in his late 80s. And I went into the living room of the apartment, and I told my mother and father, I said, Grandpa was just here. And they said, you're imagining things. And a couple of minutes later, the phone rang. It was my grandmother saying that my grandfather had just passed. So that was my first indication. And Chris has a similar story.
Well, I don't want to tell my story yet. I want to follow up on something that Thomas said, how you mentioned that, after some traumatic experience and accident, people become psychic. And I have to say, I don't agree with that. And I'll tell you why. I mean, I've been around a lot of people who I consider to be fake psychics. And I'll say it like it is. I believe them to be fake psychics. I've been on shows with people who claim to be psychic. I've gotten readings from people who claim to be psychic, and they said, well, I was a swimming person, I got into a car accident, and you know what, now I talk to the dead, or I had MS, and then I started sweating one night, and I woke up, and I was psychic. I don't believe that. I believe it runs in the bloodline. I think you're born that way. I don't think you one day just become psychic. Could you just talk on that a little bit?
Well, I mean, here's what I think. I think that I think every human being has a sixth sense, and every human being has a connect with the spirit world. It's just like, playing the piano. Some people, I could sit down at the keyboard and maybe play a song, but it's not like I'm Beethoven. It's not like I'm John Legend. And so I think that's how it is for everybody. That I think everybody has a little bit of an ability. Now, that means that a very small percentage, just because it's such a huge responsibility, it takes so much work. You really have people's lives in your hands. So that doesn't mean that everybody, has a dream of a dead person or sees an apparition and they should go and start reading people.
Right.
I do believe that traumatic situations can sometimes unlock certain things, or I think that people who come into their psychicness from a traumatic event were probably always psychic. And what I find with the people that I've worked with is not that it really it doesn't really create a different ability in them. It's more that they, especially if they go through a traumatic event, that they will have a renewed appreciation of their life and decide, you know what, screw it, I'm going to go for this. I've always had these abilities, and they move the fear out of the way and they go forward with it. I do agree with what you're saying too, that and it scares me a little bit when and I teach psychic development classes. I know we were talking before we got on air that you have some sort of psychic development. And I certainly believe that's an important thing. The thing that I think people get misconstrued a little bit is that if somebody goes and takes a psychic development or a mediumship development class, it does not mean that they should go and then, put a sign up that they're doing psychic readings. Because
exactly.
When you unlock psychicness and you unlock mediumship abilities, it doesn't always mean to predict the future or to connect with dead people. It could be to unlock your creativity. It could mean for your own personal reference. It could be so that you have a stronger empathy in your work that you're doing. It could be to make your relationship stronger with your wife because she's oversensitive and you feel like you miss. So it's developing psychicness. I don't think it always has to be. In fact, very rarely should it be to go with the intention of being a psychic or a medium. I think that that's something that I agree with you. It's probably something that's God-given, or that there's a soul contract that you have this in your chart and you're supposed to do that, and that's just what you're supposed to do. And I think people who truly have this calling, I know that I had this, I tried to run away from it for 20 years. And it kept coming back and coming back. So finally I was like, screw it, I might as well just do this because they keep bothering me about it. So
that's a great answer. And I know that you had a follow-up, but I'd like to follow up as well.
I just want to share, I actually read about, and I saw a program recently about people who had or did not say that they had any psychic ability, who were struck by lightning and survived lightning strikes, and then all of a sudden actually were being bothered by spirit and didn't want to have any connection with spirit. So I thought that was very fascinating.
Oh, yeah. Well, Thomas, you said how you ran away from it for 20 years, and for me, it was much the same. When I was 8 years old is when spirit came to me for the first time and scared the hell out of me. It didn't only scare the hell out of me, it scared the hell out of my family. The share was seeing spirit and talking about it from like 8 to 13. My family, my brother, my sisters were petrified my whole childhood because of this. So I begged spirit to leave me alone. And by the time I was 13, they just left me. I begged them. And they did. They respected me and they left. And it wasn't until I was about, I got married at 27. It wasn't until I was about 29 years old. I'm 46 now. That spirit said, you know what, screw this, Chris. You've been running from us for all these years. Well, you know what? The running stops now. Now you're going to learn. Either you learn or we're going to haunt you for the rest of your life. So, and that's pretty much how they said it to me, Tom. They said, you're either going to accept who and what you are, or we will haunt you for the rest of your life. And I said, okay, so show me who and what I am. And then that's kind of how it started for me, years ago. So, much the same. Anyway, so you want me to take two?
Yes, please, continue.
All right, so does this gift run in your family?
Well, not in a speakable way, not that I know of, but I do know that my great-grandmother on my father's side, she, we grew up in a very Catholic household. I was an altar boy. My sister was an altar server. We have people that we were really entrenched in the Roman Catholic tradition. So everybody, of course, typically in that type of, it's a very fear consciousness. It's a lot of, heaven, hell, you're going to, so there was a lot of that going on. I do have very vivid memories of my father's grandmother, so my great-grandmother. Of course, I was 7 and 8 years old. I didn't know this, but we used to go to her house quite a bit, and I was pretty close to her. And she had all these bizarre things there that, looking back, I realized she's dead now. I can't ask her, and I'm not really close to that side of the family, but I remember that she had, like, crystal balls, and she had cards with weird pictures on it, and she had a weird room, and I have a feeling that she might have done psychic reading, but I can't get anybody to really validate that. My dad's an only child. I'm not really close to him, and so nobody really has spoken. And my mother's mother, who I was very close to and died when I was 21 or 22 years old, she was very accepting of because I would talk about things, and she was really the only one I could tell things to. And so we would have conversations about the afterlife and stuff, and she would give me advice, which at the time I thought was only advice, but now I know she was really giving me psychic advice. I mean, she was a school teacher. She raised 6 children. 2 died before they were 25 years old. So she had a lot of things in her life, and I think that she had a gift. She wasn't a professional psychic. And both of, it's been interesting. As I've opened up to my gift, I have 2 younger sisters. They have in their own way, and also my mom has a bit. So I definitely think it's there. It's not as spoken about as it is maybe in other families.
Okay. It just seems to be, it seems like people who are born open or born with the gift functioning in a practical sense seem to have some familial lineage where this takes place. I know it happened in my family, it happened in Chris's family, and many of our guests who come on who are born open talk about having, usually on the maternal side of the family, but in my case, the paternal side. In your case, obviously the paternal side and your maternal side. So it's interesting to trace the lineage and to see how this goes from generation to generation. Mm-hmm. So in addition to that experience that you talked about earlier, what other early childhood psychic experiences did you have?
Well, I mean, it was sort of, at that point when I was that age, 6 and 7 years old, it was all over the place, and I really didn't have a strong sense of how to control it. And so I would have a lot of dreams that would come true, very, very vivid dreams that would then happen the next day just as I had dreamed them. I had a lot of things about people dying that I wasn't even really close to, like mothers of neighbors that would come and visit me, and I didn't know who these people were, but then coincidentally I would hear later about, so-and-so's mother died, and a lot of things like that. So it was very overwhelming for me it was overwhelming for me as a young kid, and I didn't really feel like I had a lot of people to talk to about it because my father and my mother at that point in their life were very, very close-minded about things, and so it was hard. You also have to remember too, not that I'm 1,000 years old, but when I was growing up, it was like the 90s. I mean, there wasn't, Long Island Medium and Sylvia Brown and John Edward. I mean, there wasn't really exposure, so nobody had a really knowingness of it at all in terms of even a media thing.
Well, I'm curious. So all the stuff is happening. How did you personally deal with it at that young age? What did you do? Who did you go to? How did you handle it?
Mm-hmm. Well, at first I started really sharing it with my family. I started talking to my mom and dad about it, and I just sort of said things. And especially my grandfather, because he visited me over 15 times as a young boy, and eventually it got to the point where they had all sorts of different reactions. I mean, they would be reactionary sometimes, then sometimes they were fine with it, then sometimes they would be not fine with it, then sometimes they would go against it. They would take me to anybody that would listen, so they would take me to priests, they would take me to therapists. I was very creative as a kid. I didn't have a lot of friends, so the only person that I could really turn to were actually the dead people, and also my maternal grandmother, who I just sort of could tell her anything, and she sort of would talk to me about things, and she was kind of ahead of her time. I mean, she was into all different types of religions, and she would read Esther Hicks, and she just kind of was a little bit always just into anything, and really, she was also very religious, but very spiritual and stuff. And so we would do things like she'd take me to the grave sites. We'd go. If there was a haunted thing in town, we'd go to that. We just had that type of relationship, and so her, and then really, I would talk to the people that I would see around me. But as a kid, I really didn't have. And socially, I didn't fit in at all. I was really, really didn't. I was kind of an outcast.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I think it's so important now that we educate people about this type of stuff, because I think that children, that is really the time to intervene. I mean, by the time somebody's 20, 25 years old, it's like you've already been so cultured in so many ways.
That's right. I love working with the kids. I taught indigo children in Manhattan. I did that for about 3 years, and I had huge classes. I would get in with, 15 to 40 kids that would come, and we've talked about this many times. How I think it's a real testament to the parents, because back in the day, like when we were younger, our parents wouldn't take us to somebody to teach us or to hone our psychic ability and whatnot. And now here, parents are embracing it. They're embracing their children. The kids are saying, I'm seeing somebody and talking to somebody that isn't there. Now the parents are saying, you know what? Maybe this kid has a gift. And they reach out to somebody like me or you or Victor, people who do indigo children classes or crystal kids or star kids, whatever you want to call them, gifted kids. And they bring it to us to teach them, and I think that's a beautiful thing. I think it's a phenomenal thing. Yeah,
I've got a couple of years on both of you guys. I grew up in the 50s and 60s, and back then, this was the kind of thing that was shunned, that I was told to shut up, that I was not supported in, that I was told I had an overwhelming people younger than myself to reach out to them and to say, you know what, you're okay, let's talk about it. Talk about what you're experiencing, how you're experiencing it, and to encourage them rather than to try to tell them it's their imagination to shut them down. And I think the fact that you guys do that, reach out to the young people and start teaching them, I think it's beautiful, because that's what we need to bring people into their full fruition of their abilities and their gifts. But I'm just curious, you were talking about being raised in a Roman Catholic family and being taken to a priest. How did the priest react to you?
You know, I was blessed in that way that nobody was ever very reactive. You know, I think that I don't have any big, you know, strong memories of anybody actually being like, oh my God, you're a freak, you know, oh my God, you know, and I think to myself that I must have been protected by the people, you know, the deceased people and the angels that were watching over me, because it must have been that they, you know, they were protecting me, and I truly do believe that. And to add what you were saying, just to your thing about the children and stuff, I think that is so important, because I think that, I think especially even in larger culture, like even in America right now, I think the source of why there's so much craziness going on and why there's so much, anxiety and fear and hatred and rage is really, a lot of the source of it is because we've disconnected from our youth. And I think that that's such a big part of, I'm not even talking about psychicness so much, but I'm just talking about in general that, I was reading something on National Geographic magazine the other day, and hyenas, when they get a prey, they actually feed their young first, and then the women, and then the many. That's how they structure themselves. And I think to myself about how, there's so much children suffering in the world, having problems, not being supported, 1 in 4 children abused. And it's like, what are the adults doing, So I think that for the psychic circles and the spiritual circles, it's so important to really indoctrinate kids at a young age, because they're that next generation, they're what we can change our trajectory.
Absolutely.
And very well said. Now, before I ask the next question, I just want to, this is more of a personal thing. Me being a psychic medium, people come to me all the time to connect with their loved ones. All right? I have a very hard time connecting with my own loved ones. Not so much my father. My father comes to me all the time, but my grandfather was very, very close with him. And I made a name for myself here in New York because I do seances, because I channel spirit, okay? I've never been able to channel my grandfather. Do you find it more difficult to connect with your loved ones as opposed to other people's loved ones?
As far as the deceased people I was close to, I had a close friend that died. My mother's mother died. I was close to her. My mother's father died. I was close to him. Then I have a couple uncles and aunts. So I have a good group over there. And, what I find is I might be the reverse of you. So maybe we'll have to trade sometime or something. But
absolutely, I love that.
What I find is that and I'm not trying to be cocky or arrogant, I actually feel like I feel them when I need to. I'm a big meditator, and I try to meditate 30 minutes to 60 minutes a day, and I feel them a lot. And for some reason, I know this is bizarre, but I think it's another form of meditation. Whenever I'm like on the treadmill, really zoned out, I start to feel them, and it's weird too, because a lot of times they will communicate. Like my mother's mother will come to me, and she will tell me things that, even though we were very close, still might be things that I don't even remember, or things that I didn't even know about. And just 2 weeks ago, I said, "Mom, Grandma's telling me blah, 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 blah." And she's like, "Oh, my God, da, 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 da. You didn't know about?" And it was like something I had no idea about that happened when my mom was 6 years old, so it's that validation. I do find that for some reason, I've gone to a couple, but I have trouble, for some reason, mediums reading me. I don't know what it is. I mean, I've had a couple of really good ones, too. But I find sometimes that when I go to get read, it doesn't really work for me so much.
So I could, the same thing happens to me. Go ahead, Vic. You have something you want to say?
I just wanted to share that, I talked about how my mother actually sort of put down what I was doing when I was younger. But she's now in her mid-80s, and she's ill. And in the course of the conversation, she sort of admitted that she also had had experiences and was able to now talk about them. She couldn't talk about them when my father was alive, but she was able to talk about them. And it was kind of a bonding and a healing between my mother and I at this late stage in her life. So it was really, really nice. And I just want to say that you're listening to Second Sight Radio on the DTM Wicked Radio Network. Our guest tonight is Thomas John. He's the author of a new book, Never Argue with a Dead Person. And Thomas, please tell us where you can get your book and also more about you and the activities that you promote.
You can get my book pretty much at every major bookstore. I have some book signings coming up in the Connecticut and New Jersey, New York area. I've actually got something in Asbury Park next Saturday. Not this Saturday, next Saturday. I've got a class, mediumship development class this Saturday in the city, Friday, Saturday, Sunday in the city. So a lot of stuff for me is on my website. If you just go over to mediumthomas.com, you can buy the book on there if you want to. I have some blog posts there. I have stuff about my events. And I'm also pretty active on my Facebook page, my fan page, which is Medium Thomas Fans. And I post a lot of quotes there and giveaways and, try to help people there as well.
Outstanding.
Now, I just want to say that, you guys are professional readers. I am not a professional reader. It's part of my spiritual practice. But what is it about professional readers and their names? No one has a last name. He's Chris George. You're Thomas John. Where are your last names? What's going on here?
I can answer that. I have a mentor here in Staten Island, and her real name is Barbara, but she goes by Tiffany. And she said to me, your last name is Chris Chirillo, is my real name, Christopher George Chirillo. She says, when I put your numbers together, when I put your letters together and, do numerology on your name, it's not a powerful name, but then when I do Chris George, it's a very powerful name. Not Christopher George, Chris George. She says, you have to be known as Chris George, that's it. He says, if you're known as anything else, he says, I can't work with you no more. I said, all right, I guess I'm Chris George. So that's kind of how it happened to me.
What about you, Thomas?
Well, John is actually my middle name, and I have a very, very, very Irish last name. And it was actually when I started to do this work and want to be professionally known, it was actually my mom's suggestion. She, because my last name is a long Irish name, and she said no one will ever be famous with that Irish name. You need to drop that and just be Thomas. Just have be your middle name, John.
I just want to share something about the power of a name. I don't have a middle name. My given name of birth was Victor Furman. And from the time I was a kid, everybody knew me as Vic. I was Vic. I was never Victor. I was always Vic. My grandfather on my mother's side was Victor. And about 10 years ago, I had a reading of the Akashic Records done for me by a wonderful woman who has now since passed. And she said to me, you're making a mistake with your name. I said, why? She said, by cutting off the O-R, in Hebrew, the word or is light. She said, by cutting off that part of your name, you're cutting off your light. Own your name, own your light. Your name is Victor. Be Victor. And I changed it, and since that time, it's actually made every part of my life more powerful. So, great advice.
Nice. Can I just take this back a little bit? Victor, this is a question to you. I know we have all these questions to ask Thomas, but as he's talking, things are popping into my head, so we got to go with it. Thomas is saying that, when he would be on a treadmill and he gets in the zone and he'll get messages and whatnot. It's kind of like a meditative state. I believe that's how you said it, right, Thomas?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I'm interested because with me, if I get in a steam room, I get into a meditative state. Unfortunately, a lot of times I wake up and I see things I want to see, but that's a whole other story. Now, Victor, is there something that you do, out of the ordinary that gets you into that, meditative state? I'm very curious.
I've been meditating since I was very young, and for me, meditation happens spontaneously. I just sit with the intention of going into meditation, and I'm there. So, getting into so-called into the zone happens automatically for me. But what I do find is when I do my healing work, I do my best healing channeling for the clients that I work with in healing when I'm in that meditative state.
Nice. All right. Outstanding. Okay, Thomas. Now, this is a great question, all right, because this is something that I get asked all the time when I do shows. I want to know, do you consider being gifted a blessing, a curse, or a combination of the two?
Well, I see where that question's coming from. I do believe it's a blessing, and I believe it's a calling, and I believe that it's something that I probably agreed to before I even came here. And I think it's something that's orchestrated from me. I do think that having this gift, there's various levels of it that make it difficult, and I think that that's probably true for any profession, but I do think it's more intensified in our profession.
Absolutely.
But I think, the annoying things, like, for example, anytime I go to a bar and somebody knows that I'm a psychic, it's like they start asking me questions. But, that's the thing with a lot of people with professions. I go out with my friend who's a dentist. It's like people are pulling out their teeth. It's just every profession has that thing where people are just curious. They want it. So there's that. I also do think it makes friendships and dating and family relationships sometimes difficult because, unfortunately, you can see the underbelly of stuff.
That's right.
And that's hard. It's helpful. Sometimes it's nice to probably think that, it would be great to have blinders on. But I feel personally that if I could choose to be gifted or not gifted, have this ability or not, I really do feel like I would keep this ability. I'm thankful for it, and I feel like it helps me. But, yeah, and same like you said, sometimes seeing things that you don't want to see. People always ask me, is it a blessing or curse as far as the dead people? Do the dead people, do they scare you? Are they mean? Do they scare you? Does seeing dead people scare you? And I always joke and say, which is actually true, I say, no, dead people don't scare me, but living people I find are very scary. not dead people. Because the dead people are just there to help us and guide us, and usually they're positive and kind of at peace, and they work through stuff. So they're great. It's the living people that we're all wounded, and they're walking wounded, and we're trying to make do with what we've got here, and that's what's hard, I think.
Thomas, that's exactly what I say when people ask me if I'm scared of the dead. I say, I'm not scared of the dead, but I am scared of some of the living. Absolutely. It's so true.
So, I love your answer, Thomas, and I want to share a little something as well. When I first started coming into my psychic self, as I call it, it scared the hell out of me, And then as I got older, in my 20s, when I really came back strong, I couldn't deny it anymore. I had a very hard time controlling it. I was too scared all the time. Always trying to talk to me, always trying to get my attention. I could be talking to somebody that was living, and there'd be six dead, spirits behind me trying to get my attention. And in the beginning, I couldn't decipher the living from the dead for a little while until I learned. I had to teach myself. And I remember at some point it just became overbearing, overwhelming, and I just couldn't take it. And I went to my mentor and I said, "Listen, how do I shut this off? I don't want to see. I don't want to speak to the dead anymore. I don't want this." And she says, "Be very careful what you wish for, Chris, because one day you're going to want this ability. And one day your dad is going to pass, and you're going to want to talk to him, and you're not going to know how because you're going to shut it off. And at that moment, you're going to realize you made a mistake. So before I talk to you about shutting it off," she goes, "and I tell you the truth, I don't think you can ever completely shut it off. Before we have that conversation, go home, think about it, and then come back tomorrow, and you let me know." And I remember thinking to myself, you know what? If my father had passed, I was very close to my father. He was my biggest fan. He was my biggest supporter and whatnot. And I started thinking, if he had passed and I couldn't contact him, that would absolutely devastate me. And I went back to him and I said, you know what? I guess I want to keep this. And then thank God, because that was the greatest decision I ever made in my life, because thinking of my life now without this ability, I can't imagine it. And I come from, I wasn't a psychic growing up. I was a baseball player, I was a football player, I was a fighter. I was special forces in the military. That's the type of stuff I did, very physical stuff. And then, I always had the psychic ability, but I never embraced it. And then when I finally did, I became like me and Chris George, and I spent my, the spirits every day that guided me in this direction to not think of it as a curse, but to think of it as a blessing. And that's what I've done, and I'm so thankful that I made that decision so many years ago.
Well, my daughter was born wide open, and it really disturbed her as a young kid. And it took me a while to teach her, but I taught her that with the power of intention, she could stop the activity. She didn't want spirit to come to her. That was her conscious choice. And I taught her how to turn it off. And she's grateful for it. She doesn't use it. She doesn't choose to use it. And that's her life. She's happy that way. I think a lot of kids who have this really need to have, as we mentioned before, a true mentor, someone who can sit down with them and explain that this is a gift and that the gift can be channeled and can be turned on and off with a switch if they use the switch of intention. I have a question from the chat room. Chris, did you want to get that question?
No, I was just going to let you know we had the question. You can ask it.
Yeah, I saw it before. So Myra, one of our listeners and our friends, wants to know, she has She has what they used to call monkey mind, where the brain races constantly, and it's very hard for her to get into meditation. Thomas, what suggestions would you give to people who have a difficult time meditating?
Well, I could go on for a lot with that, but the one thing that I would tell people, which we kind of alluded to, is that meditation does not have to be complicated, and meditation really, it is what it is. And I think what happens when I've been taught meditation, when I think it goes awry and not really good, is that people who really push on this idea of getting rid of the thoughts and stuff. So if you have these thoughts coming in, it's better to just notice them and let them slip away, rather than sort of almost punishing yourself or getting down on yourself for having them in the first place. Because then it's almost like the white bear experiment, where they say, don't think of a white bear, and then you start thinking of a white bear. So it's that type of thing that, but I think that, like you had said, when you have moments where you can slip in, and it doesn't have to be for a long period of time. It doesn't have to, and it's also different for everybody. And I think that, some people are really powerful meditators, can meditate extensively. Some people, it's more of a 1 or 2 minute thing, and it's not that really one is better or worse than the other one.
Absolutely. Chris, do you want to add something to that?
Well, I'm a big, as you know, Vic, I'm a huge believer in meditation, and when I teach meditation, the hardest thing for people to do is clear their mind. And you have to have a clear mind to meditate, And when I learned, it took me, I would say, 5 weeks to where I got to the point where I was actually meditating as opposed to falling asleep or just not getting it. My mind just thinking of so many different things. And I think a great way to do this, and I'm going to just for a little technique that I teach in my classes, is in your mind's eye, see a blackboard with chalk writing all over it. And then visualize yourself taking a sponge, dipping it in that bucket of water, and then wiping that blackboard clean. And what that symbolizes is, because the words are now gone and the board is wet, you can't write on it anymore. So it's a way of clearing your thoughts, okay? And I find that if you do that, I mean, obviously the first, second, third time it might not work, but, it's repetition. Psychic development is repetition. You have to continually do the same thing over and over again to get good at it. And it's the same thing with meditation, same thing with clearing your mind. And I find that if you use that tiny little technique right there, after about, 6, 7, 8 times, you'll see that your mind really starts to just kind of like open up. And it's just a great technique that I like to just throw out there to people.
And just to follow up on that, I've been teaching meditation for 30 years. And the thing that people think, the misconception people have, is that meditation requires that you have nothing in your mind. You will never have nothing in your mind. You will not have a totally blank, zero, empty mind, because the day you do is the day you make your transition. So the idea is to slow down and to reduce the number of concurrent thoughts that you're having, and to focus on 1 or 2 things. And then in the process of focusing on 1 or 2 things, you eventually focus on 1 thing. And for most people, the greatest thing they can use is what nature gave them, their breath. And just slowly, deep breathing, and then returning to a normal breath, and allowing that breath to be their focal point. And if they use the breath as a focal point, there may be interruptions. Things may come into their point of view or their mind, or they may hear things or see things. But acknowledge them. Don't fight them. Say, okay, I see you. I know you're there. Right now, I want to do something else. And let them go. And just continue to focus on your breath. And ultimately, that's for me personally, and for most people, that's the best form of meditation. Just to start with your breath. We're going to start doing some guided meditation soon, Chris. I think it's time for you to start getting out there again and doing it.
Well, I think we should. We put those great meditations out on our group page. I mean, we should be putting them out there for people. So
Absolutely.
I'm with you on that. Why don't you pick them next?
Absolutely. So, Thomas, let me ask you this: how do your gifts manifest? Are you clairvoyant, clairaudient, clairsentient, or a combination of these?
I'm mostly claircognizant, which means when I sit with somebody, you start to know things about them and ideas start to pop into my head. I'm really all 4. I mean, I do get images in my head a lot also. I do hear things. I'll hear names. I might hear what somebody's voices sound like. I might hear certain environment that they're in. I'll feel things in my physical body. I'm also empathic, so I can get people's emotions, how they're feeling about a situation. I would say but the modality, I'm probably a little bit lazy in that department, and I noticed that my claircognizance comes here, and so I just start to know things. It's just almost like I'm sitting with a close friend, and I just already know things about them. And when I came into my gift for the second time, which is when I really started doing this work, was right when I was graduated from college, and I was working at doing an internship for psychology, and I was working at Yale University at the medical school, and I was interviewing psychotic and borderline personality patients for a research study to go into a neuroimaging. And I was sitting there, and it's 155 questions that we had to ask all these people. We brain scanned over 2,500 people, and I would write down things, and I would notice I was writing stuff before I had even asked the question. So, you have to get like their past and what's happened to them and their traumatic events and their families and stuff. And so I'd start to just know stuff.
Thomas, I'm curious. Do you channel? Now, there are different forms of channeling. There's automatic writing. I believe that when you sit down with somebody and you just get messages, that's a form of channeling as far as I'm concerned. There's trance channeling, which is something that I enjoy doing. Do you do any sort of channeling?
I do. When people come for sessions with me, I do engage in automatic writing.
Okay.
And I usually do that for about 15 minutes before they even come and sit with me. I'll just meditate on their name and just start to write things. And I'm usually pretty deep in a trance then. And usually when I come out, I don't really remember the things that I've written. I kind of have to go over them a little bit. Then the person will come for their session. And then I'm in a very, very light trance then. And I am basically channeling because I am not editing the information at all.
Mm-hmm.
And when people leave their sessions, maybe immediately after they leave, I might remember 10 or 15% of what I said. And
right.
then after they've been gone for, an hour or so, I don't even remember it. So it's not really I don't really hold on to the information. And I find that when I weave in and out of it, and I find that when I'm a little bit more in the channeling is when some of the clearer information does come through.
I just want to follow up on that. A lot of psychics that I've spoken to over the years don't consider what you're doing channeling, and I completely disagree with that. I absolutely believe what you're doing is channeling. You described it perfectly. And that's absolutely channeling. And I don't know how other psychics can say that that's just you getting information. No, you have to really connect. You kind of have to give yourself up to spirit. I mean, that's a form of channeling. There's no doubt in my mind about that.
I just want to say, what does channeling actually mean? To channel is to open up the pathway and allow something to come through. A boat channels through a river. A boat channels over a lake. We're channeling spirit, energy, information, wherever it might be, wherever it's coming from, and it's coming through us. We are channels. And I think that's the simplest definition.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, the way I think of it is the definition that I always think is that it's a manifestation of the powers of consciousness through some sort of organized matter, which in this case is the body, and it's flowing through us. And so I think there's different types of channeling, and I think that people may have misconceptions about that, but I think in my readings, I'm always doing some form of channeling. It depends maybe how deep I am in something.
I think the word channeling may have gotten a bad connotation from some of the folks who, quote unquote, channeled entities from other planets, these groups of beings and so on and so forth. There are some who are wonderful, like you had mentioned Esther Hicks before, and there are some who are downright actors. And I think maybe that's where the misunderstanding of channeling came from.
Would you like me to name an actor?
No. I'll tell you who I know is good. I know Esther Hicks was wonderful.
Right.
There was a woman by the name of, her name escapes me right now. It'll come to me in 2 minutes. She was wonderful. The one who channeled Barbara Marciniak. Wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
There's another one in New York City that I think is fabulous, named Paul Selig.
Yes. Mm-hmm. You know Paul, Chris?
I don't, not personally, but I've heard of him.
I've seen him at ARE. Very good.
Okay.
Yeah, very good. Yeah.
Great. Well, in a few months, Thomas, Victor and I will be doing a pay-per-view for, our network, and it's going to be a seance. And if you'd like, I'm extending the invitation to you to come, sit in on the seance, and it's up to you. If you'd like that, I'll send you an invitation, and you can be our guest.
I would love that.
Awesome. All right, so should I pick the next one, Vic?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Now, this is a great question because I just like it anyway. Do spirits just show up for you, or do you have to reach out for them?
Well, I mean, I feel like spirits around me 24/7. I mean, people, I've always been confused by people saying, oh, I shut it down. I'm like, you're not a psychic medium and you go home and say, okay, I'm closed for the day. I mean, spirit's always around you. There's always spirit energy. Now, what I do tell people is it's just like, for example, if I was to drive, I'm at 21st and 8th Avenue right now. If I was to drive from here and go to Atlantic City for the night, and then I got there and my friend said, hey, so you just drove here from New York to Atlantic City. Tell me about every car that you just passed and what was the license plate and who was driving and what did they look like, what were the colors. I would be like, what the heck are you talking about? But if somebody said to me, hey, come meet me in Atlantic City, and when you're driving, pay attention to the cars, so that way when you come here, you can tell me about all the different colored cars, I would be able to do that. And so I think that I'm always aware of different things, and there's always things. I personally think things, and I'm not disparaging her at all, but I personally think things like the Long Island medium where she's going into the deli and reading people, I mean, that's like a little invasive to me, and I kind of feel like the work we do, I'm not going to say that hasn't happened, because it has happened. I've been at a gym, I've been doing on an airplane, I've been drinking coffee, I've been, actually, to be honest with you, I was once or twice I've been having sex with somebody, and a dead person shows up. But I think that in general, that only happens if there's just some sort of intense connection or some sort of anomaly or something. I think really, but there's always a presence. I think they're always around us. They're always there to connect with us. But I do have to kind of effortfully tune in. And I have some signs, I'm sure you do, where I'm ready to connect with spirit. A lot of times I'll close my eyes. I have a certain candle I'll light, and that just sort of enhances the connection. And that's my contract with them, where I say, look, unless it's like a 911 emergency, don't come bothering me when I'm out with my friends. Whenever that does happen, when somebody does bother me, a dead person, and it's like I always can understand why, because it's like some sort of urgent thing, or the person just died. It's like there's a point to it.
The Long Island medium really drives me crazy. She walks into the deli and says, let me have a half a pound of mortadella. And then she says, by the way, your grandmother said, that's crazy.
Yeah, well, Victor, that's all stings. I've met her. She was a nice woman. She was actually very nice. But what they have done to that woman is made her a caricature of herself. She is not, that's ridiculous. Any psychic that would go up to people and do that, first of all, like Thomas said, it's invasive, it's rude, it's unethical. We talk about psychic ethics. That is not ethical, okay? But there are times, like you say, you could be sitting somewhere and get into a conversation with somebody, and you have to, you bring stuff up. You ask them first, can I give you a message? Some people say I'm psychic, I have a message for you. But to just go up to people the way she does, that's off the show. That's just ridiculous as far as I'm concerned. I'm sorry.
Absolutely. Thomas, please share with us what your first professional reading was like. What was that experience like?
That I received or that I gave?
That you gave.
Well, again, I didn't wake up and say, oh, hey, I'm going to be a psychic medium. So, really how I got into it in the professional way was, like I said, I was working at Yale. I was interviewing these, and it was just too much because we had these people that were suicidal and they had all this intensity around it. I couldn't handle being around it. I was too zoned into them. And so after about a year and a half, I told my professor that I had to leave. And that's really when I had my quote-unquote coming out to my parents about it. And when I basically, we all sat down, and to be quite frank with you, wasn't really close to them at that time. And I basically sat them out and said, Mom, Dad, I'm gay and I'm psychic. What do you want to talk about first? So my mom said, let's talk about being gay. My dad said, let's talk about being psychic. And we had a 4-hour conversation, and I said, we just talked about everything, put everything on the table. And at that time I was living in Connecticut, and my parents were basically like, look, you should go somewhere where there's so much around you that you can do something with this. So I came to New York and just started doing oddball jobs, waitering, didn't really know anything, never, ever had any intention of being a psychic, but I knew that I needed to explore this. And it was kind of like, like my sisters are getting ready to study abroad right now. It was kind of like my hey, you're never going to get a chance to do this. My parents sort of said, why don't you take a year off? Go figure stuff out. Go do what you need to do. We'll help you. Financially, we'll figure it out. Just get this out of your system type of thing. That's kind of what it was. And so I went, and it got stronger and stronger and stronger. And I really just started just doing it for friends. And hey, I'm getting the thing. And then I'd start to do it like a friend, a friend would say, send a friend. Well, then it got to the point that it became a business type of thing. And it was just... and I think charging, not that it's not, I don't think any, unless you have a TV deal or something, no psychic is going to be rich. But I think the money came into it only because it is really an exchange of energy, and money is a form of energy. And that's, I think, a requirement to kind of balance it out.
Absolutely. That's something that a lot of people who work with spiritual energy don't get. The fact that they're giving energy and you need something back in return, whether it's in exchange, some form of payment, something, that without some type of balance of exchange of energy, then there's a tremendous loss taking place.
That's right. We have about 6 minutes at the top of the hour before we get to the second hour. But I would like to share my first reading, if you guys don't mind. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
This is years ago. Nobody knew I was psychic yet. Only, my family knew that I was doing this, and I was giving just family reading, like you were doing, Thomas, just reading friends and family. My neighbor came to me, and she said, Chris, there's this little girl that lives around the block from us. They're religious Jewish, and they don't believe in psychics and whatnot, but the little girl stays up all night watching John Edwards, watching James Van Prague, and their shows and everything, and her grandmother just died, and she's absolutely devastated. She wrote a letter, she had to do a project for school, and she wrote about how her grandmother's being eaten by worms, and she's, just absolutely devastated. Could you go over there and do your thing? I said, I'm kind of nervous. I've never done this before. I don't want to go there and not pick up anything. And she says, well, just tell her that her grandmother's there and that she loves you. And I said, Grace, I said, I can't do that. I said, I cannot go there and just lie to this little girl. I can't do it. I won't do it. And she's like, well, then just please go. And I'm thinking to myself, man, Ally McBeal is on, and I love that show, and so I really got to get up and go around the corner. Finally, I dust myself off, and I go. And when I walked into it, the first 10 minutes, I got nothing. And I started sweating. I got really nervous. And Victor, and I promise you don't know me, but Victor, you do. I don't get nervous. I don't sweat over things, and I just don't.
Except steam room encounters. We'll talk about that later.
Okay, yeah, steam room encounters are a whole other thing. But, so I started sweating, thinking to myself, I got to get out of here. I was nervous. And then I said, you know what? Why don't you take me into your bedroom and start talking about the things that you and your grandmother used to do together? And I'll tell you what. As soon as she started doing that, she started smiling. The grandmother showed herself to me. And I said, she's showing herself to me. She's wearing one of those, now they were Jewish, but, I know them as Italian house coats for women. I said, I'm seeing like an Italian house coat with blue flowers on it. And then the mother was, oh, my God. And she wanted, so I get the picture that was in the drawer and shows it to me. I'm like, yes, that's it. And this went on for like 45 minutes. And then we sat down, and the mother's kissing me and giving me Colombian coffee and whatever. And that was my first time. And I said, you know what? I could really do this. And thinking that, I just changed this kid's life, And before I left, I said, you know what? There's one more thing the grandmother wants to show you. And she put her, like the times we did it, we put our thumb and our four fingers over it and said, hey, what's the matter with you? The grandmother did that, and she was a little Jewish lady. She kissed her fingers and blew it, and kind of blew it at the family. And the mother, the father, he's a Jewish guy with curls. They don't believe in this stuff. They all start crying like, oh my God, that's what she did every day when we left for work. And it was at that moment I knew that this is what I had to do. I could do this. And I've never been nervous again, ever once, in all the years that I've been doing this. So that was my first experience, which is pretty cool, I think.
And that's a wonderful share. We're coming up to the top of the hour, and our guest tonight is Thomas John. He's the author of the book, Never Argue with a Dead Person. Thomas, please tell our listeners how they can get your book and find out more about you and your activities, and if you want to share some of your upcoming events.
Yes, I'm at www.mediumthomas.com, and the book is called Never Argue with a Dead Person. You can get it on Barnes & Noble. You can get it on Amazon.com. You can get it at any major bookstore. And I have all my events. If you just go to mediumthomas.com and click on events, I have about 15 book signings coming up in the next 3 weeks. So I'm going to be in Asbury Park. I'm going to be in Upper West Side, Barnes & Noble's on April 1st. I'm going to be actually Ripley's Believe It or Not. I believe on either the 24th or the 27th of March book signing, and I'm going to do a live audience event. So if you're in the New York, New Jersey area, definitely, and definitely not this Saturday, but next Saturday, Asbury Park at the Paranormal Museum.
Wonderful.
I have I think the obvious question. Have you ever argued with a dead person? I know I have. I wonder if you have.
Actually, let's save that for the second hour because we're going to be out of time, and that sounds like it's a great question, and we really have to get the entirety of it, and I don't want to lose it by being cut off. But I want to say to our listeners, we have a copy of Thomas's book, Never Argue with a Dead Person, and you have an opportunity to win a free copy of Thomas's book by sending an email. Now, write this down. It's really, really hard. Contest at secondsightradio.com. Contest at secondsightradio.com. In the subject line, put the word argue, and if you send it an email, we're going to have a drawing based on all the emails that come in, and one lucky listener will win a copy of Thomas John's book, Never Argue with a Dead Person. And we're going to have more with Thomas and Chris and me coming up in the second hour of Second Sight Radio. You're listening to Second Sight Radio on the DTM Wicked Radio Network. Stay tuned. We will be back. Okay.
That was an outstanding first hour. Thomas, you're fantastic, man.
Thank you.
Great show so far. Really
I love what you said to your parents. I'm gay and I'm psychic. Which one do you want to talk about first? I love that.
That is good.
Did you mention that in the book by any chance?
Actually, I did, but Greg, my publisher, said that's too risky for your first book. We can't have that.
Oh, we're still on the air. Okay, Denny. It's okay. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, it's all right.
Denny, time for a break.
We've done this once or twice, haven't we?
Yeah, we've done this once or twice.
We've been doing this show. Second Sight has been going for 5 years now, and Victor has been my co-host for almost 3 years, right, Vic?
Right, almost 3 years now.
And we were on a different network, and when I kicked my last evil, I used to, my co-host used to be Lucifer. And after I exercised that bitch and got rid of her, we had about 500,000 listeners at that point. And then she told me, you could never keep this show going without me. And I'm thinking to myself, it's my show. I'm the psychic. I'm the one that all the stories revolve around. Well, what do you mean I can't do this? So she really twisted my onions when she said that to me. And I did 3 shows on my own. The numbers stayed, around that 550,000 listener mark. And I reached out to Victor. I said, Victor, I want you to come and be my co-host. I said, you can come guest co-host if you want. And he stayed for like 3 weeks, and then it turned into 4 weeks, and then 5 weeks, and he's never left. And in the last 2.5 years, we went from 500,000 listeners over up to 1 million listeners. So Victor has really helped the show a lot. He's very, very good at what he does. And we've been doing this for now for almost 3 years together.
And not to mention that we just still have so much fun when we do this. It's just so much fun for us.
You guys have a great synergy. Now, Chris, have you ever thought of doing TV?
I had my own television show here in Staten Island for 2 years, and the show aired in Brooklyn, Queens, Staten Island, Manhattan. I don't think it was in the Bronx. I'm not sure. And it was the #1 show for 2 years. Me and my co-host at the end, it wasn't really working. She didn't like that I was getting most of the FaceTime, and so I stopped doing that, and I started doing radio. I've come very close to having my own show quite a few times, only to have it kind of gripped out on me, last minute. And the most recent one was, because they call me the Godfather of Psychic Mediums. I did a kind of like a tryout where I was wearing the suit, and I did my thing on Skype, and I gave a reading and everything, and they loved me. And they said, you know what? We want you to be more Italian. I'm like, what? I am Italian, and no, we want you to be more Brooklyn. I'm like, how did you get more Brooklyn than me? I'm as Brooklyn as it gets, And basically they wanted to make me like a cartoon character, and I couldn't do that. I couldn't sell out. So I'm waiting. I'm hopeful that opportunity will come.
Well, if you're ever interested, I know a bunch of people. I'd love to introduce you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's my dream.
Can I get up for 1 second?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We have about 6 minutes left. Denny, you got to cut us off. Put on a commercial. We're taking a break.
They can still hear us.
They can still hear us. I just asked in the room.
Oh, jeez.
Hello.
You guys can hear us in the room? Yeah, they can. Jesus Christ.
Can't see is yesterdays. It's so easy never to forget. Believing lies and reservations pushed us far apart. Am I alone? Am I alone? Every day finishing another dimmed beat. It can really end with such love I can't see. See is so strange. Loving to be so wasted on your greatness. You can get there before you become one of the restless that gives in. So up and down, welcome the good and bad, 'cause that's where the real is inside. I know this could be the last time I could see you the way I always imagined. Imagine every dream leaves me your promises, leaving me once again, waking up backwards in a different kind of real. Painting new nerves I want to deserve, so I'm counting on letting go, until landing on your in the end plans. I know this could be the last time I could see you the way I always imagined. Imagine every dream leaves me your promises, leaving me once again, waking up backwards in a different kind of real. I know this could be the last time I could see you the way I always imagined. Imagine every dream leaves me your promises, leaving me once again, waking up backwards in a different kind of real.
The paranormal,
Ghosts,
spirits,
demons,
reincarnation,
past lives,
the afterlife,
divination,
exorcisms,
witchcraft.
the unseen.
He's psychic medium Chris George.
And he's Victor the Voice Fireman.
We are Second Sight Radio.
Joined by my co-host Victor the Voice Fireman. First hour we'll be speaking with psychic medium Thomas John, the Manhattan medium. The guy is absolutely kick-ass. We love him. And he has an open invitation to show up anytime he wants. All right, Victor, why don't we get right to the Church of Second Sight?
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, Thomas, I know you don't know about the Church of Second Sight. It's usually, it could be anything. It's something that pisses me off and I rant about it. Or
It's usually Chris ranting for 10 minutes and then me calming him down and then we continue with the interview. But it's not going to be that way. It's going to be a little different tonight.
Yeah, it'll be different. Maybe. Anyway, you know, I've been helping a woman for over a year now. She, well, what you don't know about Victor and I is we're exorcists as well. And I've done over 90 exorcisms all over the world. And in the last 3 years, Victor has been my right-hand man, you know, helping me perform these exorcisms. And we helped the woman, I guess it was about a year and a half ago. And basically, the woman has psychological problems. And there's nothing bad in her house that she believes that there is. And you know, I've been working with her, trying to explain to her that, you know, there's nothing bad there. And I put in so much time and effort. I've gone above and beyond. And Victor's pretty much told me, you know what, Chris, you need to step away. Because I have a hard time meeting people that are in such dire strait, and this woman is. Even though I know that, you know, she has psychological problems, I still feel like I need to be there to help her. Anyway, she contacted a pastor here in Staten Island who went to her house, and basically, this is what he said. Thomas, you're not going to believe this. He said, the devil is here. You need to take down that picture, that picture, that picture, that picture. You need to cover these walls, cover that mirror, because the devil is here to get you. And when I heard this, my blood started friggin' boiling. I'm not going to go over there and throw the pastor the beating of his lifetime, because how dare you go to this woman's house and look for help. She is at the end of her rope. She looks like she wants to die. And tell her, oh, by the way, the devil is here and he's trying to kill you. That is, when it comes to psychic ethics, when it comes to ethics in general, that is so below the belt and so disgusting that it's really given me to the point where I'm out of my mind with it. Victor, what do you want to say about this?
It's comparable to a situation where a family in Connecticut who were having issues with their home had a paranormal team come in, a so-called paranormal team, who brought a psychic with them, who said that the spirit of a Native American chief was upset that the family had built a home on his land and had the intention of killing them in their sleep, and then charged them $900 for giving them that bill. And the whole concept is, if someone is in need, number one, and they're having issues, whether they be psychic issues or psychological issues or spiritual issues, the first thing you don't do is make them wrong. They're having an experience, whether it's an experience caused by energy, an experience caused by spirit, or an experience caused by some type of illness. You don't make them wrong. What you do is you have compassion, and you try to help them if you can. If you can't help them, do nothing. Absolutely nothing. Don't even approach. What this pastor did, and I don't know what church he was affiliated with, was to use his dogma to make her wrong and reinforce all the negative feelings that she was having. That, to me, is not doing service. And if you're a man of the cloth, you don't belong as a man of the cloth by doing something like that.
Yeah, you know, and it's funny because just the night before I was there with her, she called me up about 11 o'clock at night. I was in bed and basically begged me to go there. And I went, and I basically talked her down. You know, made her feel comfortable, letting her know that there was nothing bad there and that she was okay and she was not in danger. You know, everything that's going on is happening in her mind and she needs to go to, you know, get some help, whatever. I really worked with sister. And for this guy to go there the next day and tell her that the devil is in your home, I mean, who does that? Who puts the fear of death into somebody who's already feeling like she's about to die? I mean, I don't know. I'm very upset by it. We actually contacted her family, and they contacted that pastor and had a little conversation with him. I don't know where it went yet, but yeah, I mean, I felt like I had to let them know because, you know, this is just, it's wrong. There's no other way to say it.
It's control based on fear, and it's the absolute antithesis of the good work that people should be doing. And that's my last word on it.
Well, okay. Well, that's it, guys. That's the Church of Second Sight, and I think, you know, going back to the beginning of Second Sight when we had, you know, people that we were pointing, you know, basically putting out there, hanging them out to dry, like this pastor. I wish I knew his name because I'd name him. I want everyone to put both fingers in the air and give this pastor a big F.U. That's the Church of Second Sight, and can I get an amen?
Amen. And I just want to say what I would normally call Chris. I would say I'd like to introduce you. If you remember the Thumpkin Day, where is Thumpkin? Yeah. Where is tall man? Where is tall man? Here I am. Here I am. How are you guys, sir? Very well, I thank you. Run away. Run away. And that's the end of that.
All right, that's the end of that.
Thomas, what do you think of the Church of Second Sight, Thomas? What do you think of that?
I'm a big fan.
This one was very, very calm. I mean, you know, there's been times where it's gotten heated. You know,
I just got to tell you right now, Chris was thrown out of Bally's about 8 months ago and told never to come back because of the steam room incident. And he went on with the Church of Second Sight. That was, I got to find the tape on that replay at one time because that was absolutely hysterical.
I'll tell the story. Are you kidding me?
Very quickly, so we're going to take up too much of Thomas's time. Go ahead.
All right, I go into the steam room, and I'm taking a steam. I'm happy, you know, I'm just chilling out. There's, you know, some guys are naked, some guys have bathing suits on. I have a bathing suit on. I don't care if you're naked. It's a steam room, okay? Now, you know, in a steam room, you have two levels. Every seat was taken except for the one to my left. Guy comes in, he's naked. Okay, he's going to sit down next to me. I couldn't care less. I'm laying back. I'm taking my steam. I'm enjoying it. This guy stands up. He stands up, Thomas. I look to my left, and he got the painter's looking at me right here. I'm thinking to myself, are you freaking kidding me? So I look up at him, I'm like, hey, buddy, you got to sit down. He goes, what do you mean I got to sit down? I said, your freaking beans are in my face. You got to sit down. It's not right. You got to sit down. I don't want to look at your junk. So, make a long story short, I get pissed off, and I walk out. I go into the sauna. This son of a bitch follows me into the sauna. Now, in a sauna, that's wood seat, okay? You can't sit on the seat naked. You got to at least put a towel on you. This guy sits down naked right across from me on these, in the sauna. I tell him, you son of a bitch, I'm going to kill you. He gets up, runs out, and all I see is two little blow marks on the sausage, sweat in there, throw me out of my mind. I get up, I take a shower, I leave. You want to know what they do? And then I go back the next day. I'm in the steam room, nobody's in there. I'm like, this is beautiful. I lay back, I'm meditating, I'm loving this. I hear people coming in, all right, whatever. I open my eyes. You ready for this, Thomas? You're not going to believe this. There's this Chinese man. You ever see Captain Morgan with his leg up? Okay, there's this Chinese guy in the Captain Morgan position, completely naked, shaving his onions. And I'm like, I said, you friggin' animal, you can't shave your bones in a friggin' steam room. You just can't do it. It's dirty, So I lose my mind. I don't know why I can see this. I don't want to see this. I take a shower. As I'm walking out, they call me into the office. They say, you know what, he's the red flag. We got to throw you out of Valley, and you're not allowed here anymore. I said, wait a second. I said, you got a guy shaving his balls in the steam room. I said, that's disgusting. I said, there's got to be some kind of law against that, and you're throwing me out? Anyway, that's my Valley story, and I've been with them. I'm not allowed to go to Valleys anymore.
Absolutely. And Chris,
unbelievable.
And Chris, ballyhoo. That's all I can.
Yeah, whatever. You know what? Listen, I miss it because I like the steam room, but hey, what are you going to do?
So our guest is Thomas John. He's the author of the brand new book, Never Argue with a Dead Person. And Thomas, I've got a question for you. During the course of a reading, if you receive negative information for a client, you pass it on or you withhold it?
Well, I mean, when I try to meditate on a client before I start, I always tell the spirit world, and they pretty much know this, but I just remind them, and I tell them, don't tell me, tell me whatever I'm supposed to do to empower and help this person that can help them as much as possible in the hour. So I would say most of the time they're not going to tell me things that can't be changed in some way. But they certainly do give negative information. I mean, I would say if somebody comes and I say, hey, your husband's having an affair. They just told me the blonde at work, they're having an affair. I guess that's a negative piece of information, but it also helps that person. I always ask the person before they sit with me, do you want to hear everything? Are you open to hearing everything? And if there is a certain area that they don't want to hear about, I will ask my guides and the dead people to stay away from that. And I do, and I respect that. But I think that when you come to a reading, and that's one of the things I don't do it personally because I get a lot of calls, but I ask my team that answers the phone, tell people before they even set up a reading, now this is how Thomas reads, and, you have to understand that it's not a party trick, it's not a joke, it's not let's go see the psychic. It's really about helping and growing your life, and there might be some painful things that come through. I mean, even sometimes if you have somebody I've had so many people, I don't know if it's a new trend, but the last year or so, had a lot of people coming through that have had sexual trauma with a parent or a brother that's died now, and that relative comes through and wants to talk about it, apologize for that. So it can be, I guess it's quote unquote negative, but I think it's helpful,
Absolutely. Listen, I've been in that situation so many times where I get information and I know it's something hard to say that people might not want to hear, but they say, yeah, you can tell me anything. And Tom, I have to tell you, I start every one of my readings with that same question, can I tell you anything? Are you sure? And then I go to tell them, listen, other people have told me I can tell them anything. And I've been spit at. I've had money crumbled up and thrown in my face. I've been punched, slapped, kicked between the legs. I've been, I had a piece of cheesecake thrown at me, for Christ's sake. Okay? And every one of those people, every single one of them, contacted me 2 months later, 3 months later, 5 months later, 7 months later, and told me, Chris, you know what? I know I spit in your face, but what you told me, that's just, it happened. When you said it was going to happen, I'm sorry. Can I get a reading from you? And of course, I tell them, you know what? You've had your chance. And you spit in my face, you're never going to get a reading from me again. So,
Chris,
I'm very careful with that.
Very important question. Was it cream cheese or ricotta?
I don't eat ricotta. I eat ricotta by itself or my pasta, but never in my cheesecake. I don't like Italian cheesecake. I like American cheesecake.
All right.
Yeah, I think that also, and another thing I've had too that I'm sure you're aware of, Chris, that you must run into, But I've had, if I had $1 for everybody who said to me, I had this psychic that told me that, and I can't believe you're telling me something different. I can't believe you're not telling me that my boyfriend that I had when I was 15 is going to leave his wife and come back to me. And I'm like, lady, it's not happening. Like, I don't know who these psychics are that you're talking to, but it's like, so I always tell people too, it's like, I read the way I read, and I don't want to be responsible. I'll be responsible for something I say. Hey, if I say this is going to happen and the exact opposite happens, that's on me. But if you went and had 10 readings with every crackpot on the street, and then you come and tell me, I can't help you,
Well, what I tell them, Thomas, is that we can have 5 psychics at a table, and we can all tell somebody something different, and we can all be right.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the way it is. That's the way it is. Griffith, you had an announcement?
Okay, for our listeners, you're going to have an opportunity. We don't have too many tonight, but you're going to have an opportunity to get a reading with Thomas. So here's what you need to do. You need to call 607-349-0410. I'm going to repeat it once only more. 607-349-0410. Denny, who's producing on the network, will answer your call. He's going to put you into the queue. Let us know who's there, and you have the opportunity to ask Thomas one question. One question. So we're going to have 2 callers, 1 question each, and we're going to start that right after 9:30. We'll take the first one right after 9:30. So, Thomas, I have a question for you in the meantime. Many mediums have doubters and detractors. Do you have doubters and detractors, and if so, how do you answer them?
Well, I think yes. I think we all do in this field, and I can certainly understand why, because it's something that we can't always physically touch and understand. I always make the distinction between a skeptic and a cynic, and I think that somebody who's skeptical is merely saying, "Look, I don't know what you can do." But I'm open-minded. I'm skeptical. You're suspending belief. That's kind of what the debt. If you're cynical, though, that means that you're just out to be on a plane and on a tangent, and it doesn't matter if I tell you, your great-grandfather's Social Security number, you're not going to believe anything I have to say. And so those people, I personally, I'm not cheap for what I charge for a reading, so I kind of feel like I have something better to do with several $100s than to go testing people. But you'd be surprised, really, somebody that comes. So as long as somebody's respectful, that's the only thing I have. But sure, I have people from the, religious organizations and stuff. I'm still trying to figure out what people who read the Bible are against what I do, because I think I'm like, hello, I'm on your side. I'm saying there's a heaven and there's a life after death. So why are you coming at me? And I think a lot of that comes at fear, misunderstanding. People who, don't know really what they're talking about. It's that type of thing.
Absolutely. That's a topic for a show unto itself, the religious reaction to people who have psychic gifts, and I think we'll make that a show, like a roundtable one night, Chris.
Yeah, we can definitely
we'll have Thomas come back and have some other friends of ours join us. I think that'd be great. We're coming up to the half an hour. We're going to start doing a couple of those readings after the half an hour. But I want to know, Thomas, have you ever participated in any paranormal investigations? And if so, what are your thoughts about the field?
You mean like ghost huntings and stuff?
Yes, sir.
I will be honest with you. It's not a specialty of mine. I have done it before. I do a lot of I've done house clearings. The work that I really love, that I focus my attention on, and truthfully with paranormal, with actual ghost clearing and stuff, I think that's a very specific type of thing, and it's not a strong suit of mine. I'm able to contact the spirit. I'm able to know why they're there. I can identify usually who they are, and I know who they are. I know what they're what they're wearing. Sometimes I have difficulty like crossing them over. That's not a specialist of mine. It depends on the spirit, though. But I've done a lot of crime work, murder work, unsolved crimes, finding people, and that's really the work I like to do.
Wonderful.
It's interesting you say that, because we've had quite a few psychics on, and a lot of them don't like that work because they don't like what they see and whatnot. And I'm kind of with you. I love that. You know, I've worked on 3 cases. That's it. I mean, it's not a lot, but there are 3 cases, and I found that to be so rewarding. And I don't understand how people wouldn't want to do that. You know, you help find somebody who's missing and bring them back to their family. That's amazing. You change people's lives by doing that. Why wouldn't you want to do that? So I love that, and I wish I had the opportunity to do more of them.
Well, I think also that, you know, that as far as I know, you know, too, I think a lot of psychics have fear, and I think that, you know, like you had mentioned on you know, we were talking earlier, you know, and stuff, you know, there's all these misconceptions and stuff, and God rest her soul, but, you know, like Sylvia Brown, for example, you know, she's going on all these shows and predicting people were dead when they were alive. And I think people got, you know, scared from, you know, and what happens is, you know, people just, I always tell people, for example, when I work on crime cases, when I work with, I only work with law enforcement. I won't work with families, only because half the time the family's involved. And I don't say that from a place of judgment, it's just the truth. So I only will work if law enforcement involves me. And when they do, I don't do this stupidity about, well, we don't want to tell you anything. But I'm an investigator just like everybody else. I want to know as much as any investigator knows.
Sure,
I
right.
need to be hidden from things and stuff. And if what I say is accurate, I should be able to. And that's what I find. When there's a class, and that's the best investigators that I work with, where they're like, look, you're another source, but we're going to tell you everything we know.
Right.
And then what else can you tell us? I mean, I'm not going to sit there and guess things. So.
Yeah. Yeah, but I find that I agree. If they try and handcuff you, it's like instead of realizing that you're there to make their job easier, you know, to help them, now they're testing you. You know what? Don't test me. People, what I do speaks for itself. Okay, let me help you the best way I can, and if that means that you give me the information that you have and let me work up with that, then that's what you have to do. You know, and 2 days later, when I find that kid who's missing, you know, for 5 days, you know what, then you can pat me on the back, and then if you want a reading, you know what, I'll give you a reading too. But I agree with you completely on that.
Our guest tonight is Thomas John. He's the author of the book Never Argue with a Dead Person. Thomas, please tell us where you can get your book and also about your upcoming events and activities.
The book is at Barnes & Noble. It's on Amazon.com. It's on major bookstores, and you can get it. You can also find out about all my stuff and everything on www.mediumthomas.com.
Wonderful. You're listening to the DPM Wicked Radio Network, and we have a caller in the queue for a reading with Thomas. Sarah, good evening.
Hi, Thomas.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. I'm sorry, I'm a little sick, but I just wanted to ask about. Recently, I've been thinking a lot about my father, and so I just wanted to ask, kind of, what you thought about the future with my father in our relationship.
Okay, and your name is Sarah?
Yeah.
Okay, and your father's in the physical, correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The first thing I'm getting around your father is. This is just what they're showing me now. Of course, it can be metaphorical stuff, but they're showing me either legal stuff or jail, police, courthouse. Is your dad have legal problems?
Yeah, he substances. So yeah, that makes sense.
And I do want to say, I know that you weren't very close with him, but I want to say that your father's father, he is stepping forward for you in spirit. So is he deceased?
Yeah, he is.
Okay. And I want to say also, when he's coming through, there's some. I'm just going to tell you this because this is what's being shown me. I think it will help you heal and understand a little bit. Was your father an only child, or was he a lot younger than his siblings, or was he like an only kid?
Mm-hmm. He was the only child.
Okay. Because I think that he was exposed to a lot that he hasn't been able to share, and that's what's caused him to do the stuff with the drugs and the alcohol. Because he almost, I think he had a lot of emotional, even maybe physical, even maybe sexual things that might have happened to him. And who died in the car accident that's coming around you? Because I do have a gentleman around you with a car accident.
My dad had a really, really close male friend.
Okay.
Who died
just because
I was little.
Okay, when you were little and stuff. I want to say also, so that's, and I want to just say too, oh God. Okay, so as far as a relationship, hold on. You know what your grandfather's telling me? He said you tried already. He said you tried and tried and tried.
I did, yeah.
Okay. You know what I'm hearing? What I'm hearing is to let it sit for a while, and to write your dad a letter in a little bit, and maybe in a year or so, write your dad. And honey, what is with the wedding bells? Who's getting married?
I'm getting married.
Okay, because your grandfather says, don't worry about Dad being at the wedding. Your dad's not going to be at the wedding, but your spirit friends will be. Your grandfather will be there, and you're going to have you will have a good day. You're going to have an enjoyable day. And I see it'll all be fun. Your dad is just, I actually, to be totally honest with you, I think your dad is a little bit. He might have a gift or something, but I just think his energy is all over the place. What's his birthday?
It's coming up in March. Yeah,
March. Okay, first night. Probably. I just fell.
Oh my gosh.
Our pleasure. He's fine.
I am fine. But I was going to say with the Pisces energy, there could be a lot of depression. So, I think, what'd you say?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but do you think he'll ever overcome his addiction? I wonder, because I feel like he will be able to help the pieces.
They actually said that he will be able to. And one of the funny things is I can see that, but this is all karmic, because am I correct in saying that you are a healer, a nurse, a therapist, or something?
Yeah, I'm a therapist.
Okay, so this was, believe it or not, this was part of your karma. You and your dad came here together, and your dad said, I'm going to be one of your teachers. And he was there to teach you. He was there to put you through certain things so that you could have a heightened compassion for others. Now, your dad chose the way that he did it, and he didn't have to necessarily choose this route, but this is what, he has free will, and this is what he chose. Mm-hmm. But I just know, and, but he's okay. He's okay. What is with your dad and pets?
Oh, yeah. He has so many pets.
Okay. See, your dad, as much as people say your dad is a crazy person, he's actually he's very loving. He's got a lot of issues, Yeah, wow.
Our compassion is with you and your dad and your family, and congratulations on your wedding. And just keep the positive energy, my dear. Keep the positive energy.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Thank you, Thomas.
No, that was beautiful.
I've never fallen out of a chair before.
Yeah, but you were graceful, so it's okay.
There you go. Absolutely. Do you have another caller in queue?
I think Tommy's calling in. I don't know if he has yet. Maybe we could put the number in the chat room. I don't have it yet.
Okay, I'll just repeat the number one more time because we will take one more call. It's 607-349-0410, 607-349-0410. One more caller for Thomas tonight. And while we're waiting for the next caller to come up, Thomas, you have these wonderful events called A Night with Spirit and Dinner with the Dead. Please tell us about those. Those sound like fantastic.
Well, the Night with Spirit events are similar to other, audience. They're like you might see other meetings. They're demonstrations or platform demonstrations. So I get in front of people. Not everybody's guaranteed a message, but I do believe who's supposed to come through comes through. And and that's how those work. So, and I have them all over. I mean, I don't have any particular coming up in New York right now, but I have one coming up in Seattle in April, and so those are those. I also have in New York City what I call them spirit circles, and they're groups of 12 people, and everybody gets a message or gets to ask questions about a crossed over person or a psychic question. And then Dinner with the Dead is it's really just a fun type of thing. I created it really because I like to cook. I'm not really that great at it, but I like to cook. I like food. I like to go out to restaurants. And I had this idea, actually, me and my business partner, Jimmy Floyd, we had this idea of, why don't we have a great dinner party and invite people to connect with their loved ones during the dinner party. I mean, it's not like no psychic has ever done that before. So we started to call it Dinner with the Dead, and so we usually get them in a great restaurant. We do wine pairings, very small, but we do wine pairings just because we don't want people wasted. And we give appetizers, dessert, and I go around the table, I move around the table, and I give messages to people. And it is probably one of the most because I'm all about, the dead does not need to be spooky. It does not need to be, oh my God. And so we make it a fun, uplifting, just a great night out, and it's like, for a lot of people, especially, like, I know you guys said Italian, and, I know in my family I'm Italian and Irish, so food, and, when you miss your loved ones, it's like you never get to have a meal with them again. So it's a great way for people to almost feel like their loved ones are at, dinner with them. We had some for Thanksgiving, some for, and we're going to have some other ones. We don't have any up on the site right now because I'm on a break for the book, but we'll be starting those up again too.
Well, it's like the old tradition, Italians, Irish, and Jews. Somebody died, let's eat!
That's right. That's right. All right, so Thomas, I'm curious. How did you get the name Psychic to the Stars?
Well, I didn't give myself that name, and that was really also a coincidence thing. What happened is I know, I'm sure as you know, living in New York, you meet all sorts of people, and it was really just little by little by little, I started to read for famous people. I mean, I never really intended on that at all. And then I got a place in Los Angeles, a part-time place out there, so I started going out there more. And there was more of that. And so people just, I started to get people, and then, they tweet at me, or they'd invite me on a TV show with them. And so it just sort of happened that I started, and then people started to kind of, call me that and stuff. But I work with all sorts of people. I mean, I work with people, old, young, I've read for policemen, firemen, doctors, lawyers, nuns, all sorts of people. So I have you don't need to be famous.
Can you tell us a celebrity story or two?
Well, one of the fascinating, I know you guys were talking about this, I think, before we went live about, or maybe it was when we were on the air, but I have had a couple of celebrities come through in readings, and that's been very fascinating. I actually had somebody who was so blown away by it because there was this guy that came to me, and he was just, he was just working in, some misdirected field, but the famous radio host, Casey Kasem, came through in his reading, and I said, I know this is weird, but I said, do you know Casey Kasem? And he goes, oh my God, he gave me my first job. I mean, I haven't talked to him in 50 years. He goes, you mean he died? I sent his family a car, and Casey Kasem came through. And I've done other things with some people. I've actually been able to make contact with Michael Jackson. I had a couple people who came to me who were not family, but close friends of his. And so I've had some good people, yeah.
Wonderful.
Well, I think we have a call number 2, right?
Yeah, Tommy. Let's get Tommy, and I will get Jody after that if we have time.
Tommy, with us.
I sure am, you gorgeous menu.
Oh, Tommy.
Well, you should know, Thomas, that Tom is a very good friend of mine, and he's actually lead investigator for our group, Second Sight Paranormal, and he's an all-around psychopath, but he's a great guy. Yeah. So go ahead, Thomas.
I do what I can.
Thomas.
You're not wearing I am. I'm wearing them on backwards. It's a Speedo song. I'm wearing it backwards, but the sad thing is it fits.
What's the question for Thomas?
Tom, I moved to Massachusetts about 2 years ago after, Hurricane Sandy. I lived in Rockaway, New York. Moved up here, and I just want to see what you're seeing for me, and just if Massachusetts was the correct move to come here.
Not this winter.
I know. Oh, my God. Yeah, you've seen the pictures. You know exactly. I'm going to open my own toboggan business.
So you moved from Rockaway to the Boston, to Massachusetts.
To Massachusetts. It's called PB, Massachusetts. I'm 3 miles away from Salem.
Oh, okay. You know that I'm originally from Massachusetts.
All right, we'll come back up.
You're not going to stay there. I don't think you're going to stay there. The guide said no, you're not going to stay there. Now, the guide said that you are going to stay there for probably about, timing can be a little bit like a little bracket, but you probably are going to stay there for, I feel, between 1 to 3 years.
Okay.
You might even stay a little bit more. As I'm hearing that, they're saying it's more like a year. But I don't see you staying there. It says that you're going to move for another person, too, so it might be like the needs of someone that you're in a relationship with or something like that, because I saw you when you moved. And there's also something that comes around you. I'm seeing gold coins. So when I see gold coins, that always means to me entrepreneurship. It always means that somebody's supposed to start their own business or be an entrepreneur in some way. So I feel like if you've ever thought of doing that, I would probably do that. I would probably start it on that, because I do see that around you.
Whoa. Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty interesting.
I don't get a connection with you in Massachusetts as far as like you're going to be there when you're for a long term. It doesn't show me that.
Wow. Let me say one thing. Tom, I agree with them. I don't see you there for more than 3 years either. So
wow.
I don't know where you're going to be. I actually think you're going to come back up this way.
Tom, you got to come home. We got a lot of work to do together.
Yeah, no kidding. I'm going to. Jackie's going to be upset about it, but I guess we better not buy that condo.
And Tom, listen, what happened when you went to Massachusetts? You got a ton of snow and deflated balls. That's all. There's nothing.
Yeah, you know about that. Yeah, everyone's heard about that. All right, cool. Well, thanks, Tom.
Thanks for calling, buddy.
All right, guys. Have a good night. Thanks, Tom.
All right, do we have Jody in the chat?
Jody in queue?
Jody, are you with us? All right, I guess Jody is not with us.
So the interim, Thomas, tell us, what prompted you to write Never Argue with a Dead Person?
Well, I'm a pretty talkative guy, and I like to tell stories about my work. I think that through stories you can illustrate a lot of things, and it really just started from having a lot of sitting with people, telling them about my work, and people saying, "Oh my God, you should write a book." And so I started to just put my stories together, and I didn't want to just write I didn't want to just write any story, and so I started to write stories that really had a meaning, stories that I thought were interesting. So every story in the book has a dead person, a living person, and myself, and we all communicate in some way, and each story has a lesson.
All right. Dick, do we have another person in the queue?
Yes, I believe we have Myra in queue. Myra, you there? Hello?
Then could you put Myra through, please? Well, I guess she's not there. He just sent me a message saying that she was in the queue, but I guess that got screwed up. All right, so I want to know, could you please share one of the stories from the book?
Well, I think I feel like they're all pretty fascinating. The great thing about the book is that I think, because I have major ADD, so I wrote the book. I can't read more than 10 or 15 pages at a time, but I love to read, and I do read consistently. So I love books that you don't necessarily have to read in order, and so that's how this book is. It's really a sort of anthology, chicken soup, noodle soup for the soul type style book. And so every story is separate. So you can open up the book in the middle and open up, to the middle of the book, and it could be a great story for you. Let me think of it. Let me actually, I'm going to open the book here, and let me just open up, and I'll tell you. Oh, you know what? This is a great one. So there's a story in the book about. It's actually pretty interesting. It's a story in the book. I'll abbreviate it, but a couple came to see me for. They wanted a reading, and they were getting married, and so no pressure like this. The fiance called me and said, "I need a reading this week, and if I don't get one, I'm thinking of canceling my wedding." And so I was like, I book up in advance. I book up a couple years in advance, and so I told her I didn't have an opening. And then all of a sudden I got a bunch of cancellations in 1 week, which never happened. So I knew it was a sign I was supposed to reach out to this woman. She just stuck in my head. Called her and booked her appointment. She came with her husband, and we connected. And it was a pretty bizarre thing. But the moral of the story was both of their fathers had died. And their fathers had actually killed each other. They were almost like mafia-esque people, and they had gotten and they had not met each other, and they really met through their father's death.
Wow! So
they wanted clarity that was okay, because they were like, "This is really screwed up that we've got." We met through. Are they okay with that? Because they didn't like each other. And, so all this stuff came through, and some signs came through. I said, look for a rainbow. And then a few months later when they got back from their honeymoon and stuff, they wrote me and said, on our wedding, this big rainbow came over where we had our wedding, and it was unbelievable. So I think stories like that just kind of, they're just kind of just fascinating, uplifting stories.
Nice. Very nice.
I think we have Myra in queue now. Myra, are you there?
Yep.
Hey, Myra, how are you?
How are you, Myra?
I'm awesome. How are you? All of you.
Good. We're doing great. Do you have a question for Thomas?
Actually, I do. I would like to know if my two uncles are still here.
I didn't hear that. What was that?
I'd like to know if my two uncles are still here. I'd like to know if they haven't left yet.
Oh, you want to know if your uncles are in the physical?
No, I know they're gone. I know they've passed. I want to know if it's possible. I want to know, well, basically the question is I want to know if they're still here on Earth and haven't gone yet. And if so, I just want to know, I want to know that so that I can find out if I can, talk them.
I see. Okay. And so your first name is what?
Myra.
Okay. I'm hearing that one is and one isn't. I feel one is almost like earthbound, and one is not earthbound. Do you ever have family on the West Coast? Do you?
Not that I am aware of.
It's interesting to me because for some reason I feel one of them is bringing up like the West Coast, like the West. I don't know, like I'm seeing the West. I don't know what the significance is.
Myra, where do you live, Myra?
I live in Washougal, Washington. Sorry, I'm emotional, so I wasn't really paying 100% attention. I asked the question one more time.
Oh, okay. Is that where they crossed over?
I don't think so. I don't know about one of the uncles. The other one is a no.
I mean, that what I'm hearing is, so maybe that's their sign. Maybe that's the sign that one of them is almost around you, because I'm feeling that one is on the West Coast. One is definitely in the spirit world, though. I feel that definitely one is in the spirit world, and so that's what's coming up for me. Now, the other thing is I know you didn't necessarily ask about this, but I feel like since I'm getting it, I might as well tell you it. Have you ever thought of acting or performing or anything like that?
That's what I do. That's what I do. Actually, I have a.
Okay. Because what I'm seeing for you, this is just what the guides are telling me, is there's certainly some, you could do more of that, but I'm also being told that you're supposed to actually use your gift. I think that you have some sort of, very, very intense gift, and they're saying that you're supposed to use it and it might not be through performing stuff, that's just what I keep hearing.
I told her the same thing. I told her the same thing a couple nights ago.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's funny. I'm an actress, and I am very into healing. I like to educate people on how to heal themselves naturally instead of.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly not it's not a bad thing at all. It's just what they're telling me is that you're supposed to do something. You're supposed to do something more than that, and I feel like it might be more in the shamanic. It might be more in that, more in that stuff. Mm-hmm.
What's shamanic? What's that?
Well, it's a type of healing. You'd have to really look more into it. But I feel like there's something I'm seeing with you doing, like, and I feel you have a very strong Native American guide around you that's helping you and wants to help you connect. And, yeah. Now, I'm just going to ask another thing. With your space, with your geography, like where you live, so about a year ago, so this time, we're in 2015, so 2014 or the end of 2013, did you relocate?
Yeah, I was in the same town and just, I moved into my own place after being with my parents for a couple years.
Okay, because for some reason when I'm hearing about it, is that they're very, very proud of you for that. So I don't know if that was like a big step for you, or exactly what that was, but I just keep hearing that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was. And I wanted to say, I had a reading 3 years ago, and they asked me, the woman asked me, she read my palm. I don't know if that's like a real thing or not, but I went for and she asked me the same question that you just said, and it was, why aren't you using your talents to your fullest ability? And I had no idea what she was talking about. I thought she meant acting.
We're gonna have to wrap. But Mara, I just want to tell you something. A shaman is exactly what you do right now without knowing that you're a shaman. You are a shaman, and that's something for you to pursue and to research. And you're wonderful. We love you. Thank you for calling.
Love you too.
Take care.
Have a good night, Mara.
Thomas, what a wonderful night. We have to do this again very soon.
Yes, I would be happy to.
Would you tell our readers what you would like them to take away from your book, Don't Argue with a Dead Person?
Well, the book is really about love continuing on the other side, and it's really about the continuity of life. And so, if anything, I would like people to be comforted by the fact that, all this that we are, the body and stuff, it's all just an illusion. And we're really, we really are a spiritual being that has to make a quick stop in the physical. And, this isn't the end at all. And death is really, it's a transition. It's not a bad thing.
There's no beginning to my death. There is no ending to my life, no beginning to my death. Death is life. It's continuity. That was from Emerson, Lake and Palmer, from Pictures in an Exhibition years ago, one of my favorite songs. Chris?
Oh, well, Thomas, I'm curious. You said that you have a Facebook fan page, but do you have a personal page that you use or no?
Yes, I have a, you can, I don't know what the exact link is. I think it's Medium Thomas, but my other one is Medium Thomas Fans.
Okay, so if I wanted to send you, which one would I go to?
Medium Thomas.
Okay, I'll do that after the show. Listen, man, I got to tell you, you were fantastic.
Thank you.
Phenomenal psychic, and I'm real critical of psychics, and to tell you that, I thought you were absolutely amazing, and it takes a lot to amaze me. And
Myra's a personal friend. You were totally 100% spot on.
Yeah.
Obviously, I don't know Sarah, but you were hitting on everything that you were saying with her. And Thomas, you are the real deal, and we are proud to call you not only a guest on our show, but our friend now, because we want you to be our friend.
Yeah, and we definitely need to connect because we have some things to do together.
Absolutely.
I would love that.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, listen, everybody. Victor, who do we have as a guest next week, by the way?
I just want to say that Thomas's book is Never Argue with a Dead Person. And one more time, Thomas, please tell our listeners where they can get your book and more about you and your activities.
The book is on Amazon.com. And it is in a lot of bookstores, too. If you see it, it's got a picture of me with an orange cover. It's by Hampton Roads. And you can buy it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and you can find out about me at mediumthomas.com. The best way to stay in touch with me, I can't answer personal emails, but what I try to do is post on my Facebook page, Medium Thomas Stands. I'm a Twitter person, so that's Medium Thomas. And I also do my newsletter. It's a great way to subscribe. And I'm really someone that tries to give away. So just last year I gave away 100 readings, half-hour readings, 20-minute readings, hour readings. So, and I always give those away on my newsletter or my Facebook. So always check on there because I'm always running contests and stuff like that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And Chris, our guest next week is our friend, Dr. Rita Louise. Always a pleasure to have Rita on with us, and we're looking forward to that show.
Yeah, I think the people are going to love Rita because she's a New York girl, and she could be pretty hardcore, and you would find that very hard to believe when you look at her. But she's an awesome guest, and I'm looking forward to next week. Thomas, thank you for being our guest tonight. Listen, everybody, we're here every week trying to make the unbelievable believable. May the spirits guide you. Thank you, and good night.
Thanks, everybody, and have a great night.
Okay.
Thomas, hang